Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Be Real Here podcast. I am your host, Rory Wicks, and today's topic, as voted by you, the Senate. With the sad news of RBG's passing and the swift announcement of Amy Barrett, it only makes sense that that is at the forefront of our minds. So, without delay, I bring you the Senate, a real look at the real history and the bullshit that they're up to. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And as I mentioned, we're talking about the Senate today. And I don't want to bore you with 15 minutes of history. I don't, but we will have to talk about it a bit because understanding, I guess, the framers' intentions for the Senate, I think, is very important because right now, the Senate we have is nothing like the Senate that was written. But before we begin, as always, please like, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening to, be it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or on my website. And don't forget to throw a like on Facebook at facebook.com/Let'sBeRealHerePodcast and on Twitter at BeRealHerePod or on my personal Twitter at AGenderBlogger. But let's dig in. According to the Senate.gov, the framers of the Constitution created the United States Senate to protect the rights of individual states and safeguard minority opinion in a system of government designed to give greater power to the national government. They modeled the Senate of governors' councils on the colonial era and on the state senators that had evolved since independence. The framers intended the Senate to be an independent body of responsible citizens who would share power with the President and the House of Representatives. James Madison, paraphrasing Edward Randolph, explained in his notes that the Senate's role was first to protect the people against their rulers, and secondly, to protect the people against the transient impressions into which they themselves might be led. To balance power between large and small states, the Constitution's framers agreed that states would be represented equally in the Senate and in proportion to their populations in the House, further preserving the authority of individual states. They provided that state legislators would elect senators. This has since been changed. The people now elect the senators, but their intention was that the state legislators would. To guarantee senators' independence from short-term political pressures, the framers designed a 6-year Senate term, 3 times as long as that of the popularly elected members of the House of Representatives. Madison reasoned that longer terms would provide more stability. If not be a firm body, he concluded, the other branch being more numerous and coming immediately from the people will overwhelm it. The framers specified that 1/3 of the members' term would expire every 2 years, leaving 2/3 of the members in office. This combined the principles of continuity and rotation in office. Now, something I want us to remember, and I pointed this out in my second episode, I think it was, but the framers didn't like political parties. So in their initial idea behind the Senate, that wasn't a consideration. It wasn't until 1920 and 1925 that the first majority and minority leaders were established, and it was started by the Democrats. I doubt even they understood the kind of power that they were giving, because no one in their right mind would assume that the people of this country would utilize their power to be a bully and just block things for no reason, right? So why did these 2 incredibly powerful positions get established? Well, according to the Senate website, it was out of necessity. It made their lives easier. But this job was never meant to be easy. Running a country was never intended to be easy. So having one person be the spokesperson for a whole party that the framers likely wouldn't have liked doesn't exactly seem like the direction they would have wanted to go. The Constitution actually calls for the Vice President to be the President of the United States Senate and for a President pro tempore to serve as the Senate leader when the VP is not there. However, in practice, neither the VP or the President pro tempore actually preside over the Senate on a daily basis. Instead, that has been given off to junior senators of the majority party, even though the VP and the Senate majority might be from different parties. This doesn't make sense. If the Constitution has it written that the vice president or president pro tempore are to preside over the Senate, shouldn't they, I don't know, preside over the Senate? In all actuality, the vice president has very little power by Senate rule, likely because the VP is not a member of the Senate and therefore not subject to Senate discipline. So it seems over time that it has evolved and changed, and now it's really the majority leader who manages the Senate, something that the framers almost guaranteed would have stood against. A single person in charge of all scheduling for the whole Senate, who is also a member of that body and can cast a vote, and is one of the leaders of a political party, something that they disliked? That doesn't exactly seem like their intentions. Now, I wonder, I'm just speculating, but I wonder if the VP overseeing the Senate and not being subject to Senate discipline was intentional. Maybe that's what they wanted. That's why the VP doesn't vote except to break ties, that their main job was to run the Senate instead of being mainly an advisor or face to the president, because that's mainly what they do now. And the Constitution doesn't expressly assign the vice president to any one branch, causing a dispute amongst scholars about which branch of government the office even belongs to. Is it the executive branch, the legislative branch, both, neither? The modern view of the vice president is that they're an officer of the executive branch, one isolated almost totally from the legislative branch, which seems counter to the goal of being the president of the United States Senate. I am far from a governmental scholar, but knowing even just a little bit that I do, it seems to me that the vice president was meant to be a voice between the two, overseeing the Senate and making sure that, 400 plus bills don't sit on the desk of the majority leader doing nothing for the American people. On top of that, they were able to advise the president and help keep them in check as well. And if the vice president was too busy, they'd put something in place for that too. But over the years, it has become a practically meaningless position. The president pro tempore is authorized to preside over the Senate, which does very little when all the scheduling and the leading of the votes is done by the majority leader. But they can also sign legislation and issue the oath of office to new senators. Yay. Now, do I think that the vice president right now, if they were actually running the Senate, that things would actually get done? No. Mike Pence is an evil, homophobic, white-haired skid mark on society. If he held the powers that Mitch McConnell holds, it would be the same, if not worse. But I also think that that kind of power would change who we pick to be the vice president. People might actually want to go for the job because they would be able to do something. Speaking of powers, what exactly is it that Mitch McTurkeyneck does? Well, that's a good question. The Senate Majority Leader and Minority Leader are two United States senators and members of the party leadership of the United States Senate. They serve as chief Senate spokespeople for their respective political parties, holding the majority and minority in the United States Senate. They also manage and schedule the legislative and executive businesses of the Senate. They are each elected as majority and minority leaders of the Senate by their associated caucus, being the Senate Democratic Caucus and the Senate Republican Conference. In human terms, they're managers. The majority leader has the power, by convention, not by formal rule, to determine what bills are put to a vote and when. In this way, even if it's expected that the majority of the Senate will support a bill, such as bills to fund the government and end a shutdown, which have been coming out of the House, the majority leader can prevent the bill from ever coming to a vote. This is how McConnell was able to block Obama's Supreme Court nomination of Merrick Garland. He just simply never scheduled a hearing or a vote. There is a way for senators to bypass the majority leader to force a vote, but it's really not all that useful. Any senator can introduce what's called a motion to discharge. Officially, this motion moves a bill from its committee directly to the Senate floor, regardless of how the committee votes on the bill or whether the committee has even taken up the bill. It also automatically forces debate and a vote on that bill. A motion of discharge has to be voted on, of course, and approved by a simple majority in the Senate. The problem, however, is that the majority leader gets to set the schedule for when a motion of discharge is voted. So, say there is some bill a majority of the senators want to pass, but the majority leader doesn't. Any of those senators can file a motion to discharge. but the majority leader can then just postpone the vote on the motion to discharge indefinitely. So, to get this straight, the one tool that they gave themselves to try and override the majority leader is effectively useless. And since the majority leader is not a constitutional position, and since it isn't even a position created by Senate rule, only the majority leader's own party can challenge their leadership. It depends on the party's specific rules, but generally speaking, any senator from the same party can challenge the leader's position. It would then go to a vote of only the senators from that party. And it's not a vote in favor or against the majority leader. It's a vote for a new leader. So the challenged majority leader is allowed to run to keep their own position. Though if the majority of the party votes for the same leader, they keep it. And if the majority of the votes go to a different leader, then that person gets the job. Are we starting to see how broken this is? Why can't other people bring bills to the floor? With the majority leader acting like McCockles does, nothing is going to get done. Nothing gets put to a vote, and hardly anything gets debated, and based on past rule, the only person able to fix it is within the same party as the majority leader. I don't hold on to much hope that they're going to vote McShit out, because he's pushing for the things that they want. They understand that they no longer represent the majority of Americans, and so their only hope is to follow Trump. Worse yet is Trump likes the guy. He likes how much he wants to focus on judges, and every Republican in the Senate has officially lost their spine to Trump. Even Mitt Romney, who voted to indict the president on impeachment, is going to vote on Trump's new Supreme Court pick. The spine we thought Romney had, or I guess was growing, fell as soon as he saw the opportunity to overturn Roe v. Wade. His true colors have shown once more. The system doesn't work. I think that's pretty clear. There are over 400 bills on Moscow Mitch McPutin's desk that he has openly said he's not going to pass. He said, and I quote, "We're not going to pass those," end quote. Simple, straight to the point jackassery. And since the start of 2019, Mick Oldenwhite and the Senate Republican caucus have done almost no legislating. The vast majority of their 428 roll calls last year were related to Donald Trump's nominees to the courts or executive branch. Even several members of McConnell's own caucus have criticized their leadership for focusing almost solely on nominations. At a quick glance on the Senate's website today, I counted 60 votes on nominations. Several had more than one person listed. But this aligns with Trump's priority. It's the courts. In my very first episode, I pointed this out. The courts are Trump's bread and butter. And McCockneck over here is wielding his precedent-based power to do nothing but help Trump stack the courts. And he started it before Trump was even in office because he held over 100 court nominees to the start of Trump's term. And I'll admit, the House hasn't been passing bills that were entirely bipartisan. I mean, sure, these bills could use some work, but this is why the system is set up the way it is. And some of these 400 plus bills that Mr. Mick McBullshit over here is blocking include the Global Hope Act, which is, a bill to help global partnerships for the fight against childhood cancer, the Securing America's Port Act, which is to ensure that vehicles entering the United States at land ports are scanned, the Unlocking Opportunities for Small Business Act, which makes it easier for small businesses to compete for federal prime contracts, and H.R. 5037, which is a bill to rename Farmville, North Carolina's post office after the late Representative Walter Jones Jr. And these bills, every single one of them, are passed through the House with a supermajority. So these bills, which he could use as a tool to show that the government is working, are instead dying on his desk with no expectation to see the light of day. These are bills that were passed with bipartisan support, but Mitch McNeckfat couldn't possibly be bothered with things like the fight against childhood cancer and additional port protections. These aren't stacking the courts or preparing to nominate a Supreme Court justice within weeks of the presidential election. Oh wait, that's also a court. Are we seeing a trend yet? The purpose of the Senate was to give all states an equal voice. That's why there's an equal number of senators per state. But people that live in D.C. and Puerto Rico have no voice in the Senate. But The two territories combined have over 8 million U.S. citizens. And yes, Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens since 1917. And even not including that, right now there are 30 Republican senators of the 100 senators total that represent only 30 million people. That's less than California, which has 2. Allowing statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico would help balance the scales. The Senate right now gives the average black American only 75% as much representation in the Senate as the average white American. And the average Hispanic American only gets 55% as much, according to New York Times. And that's just in the Senate. And again, I understand that the purpose of the Senate was to have equal voices for all states in this body, but it doesn't. The only voice that matters right now is the voice of the majority leader. And since they'll only put forth what they want, that makes anybody else's voice meaningless. So what's the point of a system that's designed for equality when one person has all the sway and the power to make any voice matter, and other people have no voice at all? In my, I guess, most humble opinion, the sole powers of the Senate being exclusive authority to approve or reject presidential nominations to the executive and judicial offices, and to provide or withhold its advice and consent to treaties negotiated by the executive, could easily also be done by the House, and in a more parliamentary fashion. And we wouldn't have to worry about all this extra bullshit. We would have 400 more bills passed. It would force the president to actually work with the House instead of ignoring any form of legislating, and instead putting his focus on the only thing he cares about, the courts. Just by eliminating the Senate, we would have, a government? Because it would force Trump's hand. I believe that an elected official's job is to be held accountable to their constituents, that they should be voting based on the majority of Americans, within reason. The fact that we have a president that lost the popular vote and is about to stack a Supreme Court by a Republican majority that represents 15 million fewer people than the Democratic minority, and with their singular goal in mind that really only represents about 25% of Americans, shows just how broken the system really is. This is not the will of America. Pro-life is not the will of America. 70% of Americans believe that Roe v. Wade should stay, so leave it the fuck alone. The 25% of Americans that are the evangelical radical Christians who believe only their voice matters in America do not get to be the ones that decide what we, the people, can or cannot do. We dug ourselves a hole. Our Senate has run unchallenged by bad precedent that may have made sense at the time, but makes little to no sense now. The government's ability to pass legislation is solely on the shoulders of a man who doesn't want to pass anything. Could the Democrats pass more bipartisan bills? Sure. They probably could, but they also have, and those are still sitting in the legislative graveyard that is Mitch McTrump's desk. He could take some to the floor for debate and vote, or anything, but the Senate has done so little in the time that they are in session, and now they're gearing up to leave again. And after October comes this election. So we have a chance here to vote some of these useless politicians out and put people that are actually going to do something into power. And I'm not just talking about putting Democrats into power, because some of them aren't much better. I'm a Michigander, and Debbie Stabenow isn't exactly great. Gary Peters is getting better, but he's not exactly a senator to be proud of yet, but he's shown great potential. For example, his questioning on the Postmaster General was very good. So look who's running in your state. Look at the independents. Bernie Sanders is an independent, and he's made waves in the Senate. Some might not agree with him, but you can't argue that he's made waves. He started a movement of social progressives that has changed this entire country. You can't deny it, because it's why I'm talking to you. Here's the thing. We need to fix this, because the way politics is being run right now is a power grab from people on both sides of the aisle. They aren't putting the good of the Americans first. And I don't want to get too deep, but honestly, I feel like the state of the country is on the line with this election. we have Trump, who is actively doing things to harm the country and bring it backwards. And we have Biden, whose main goal seems to be just to take us back to 2016 and erase Trump. But that's not going to happen. The damage he's done is going to be everlasting. The people he has radicalized won't go away if he loses the election. Biden is statistically our best chance to move forward. And I don't like it, but it's true. We are, I guess, as people, as humans, we are given one chance at this life. And right now, we're spending our time fighting over everything. There's no compromise on either side. It is, I'm right and you're wrong from both of them, essentially leaving our government at a standstill. The thing I don't understand the most, and I guess I doubt I ever will, is that most of the Americans want to move forward. They want to progress. The majority of Americans support LGBTQ rights. Sure, there's still some debate within that, but they believe in equality. We're moving past the days of homophobia. We believe as a country that the African American community deserves to be treated equally and given opportunities so that they can catch up to the millions of white Americans that have had a 200-year head start. But right now, so many social conservatives are like refusing to accept this progression. And in fact, we're seeing a degeneration of rights, especially within the trans and black communities. And it truly doesn't affect all of these people that hate or don't like it. And honestly, under whose authority do you get the right to tell us what we can or cannot do? If it isn't hurting you, and it's not, you should just shut up. Move on. It should be okay for everyone to be accepted and acknowledged by their government, and for everyone to have equal opportunities to grow wealth and get out of poverty. And if it does hurt you, maybe your land value goes down a little bit. Maybe. But it's a small price to pay for equality, and one that I'm more than willing to pay once I buy a house. Honestly, and I've said this a lot, and people are probably getting tired of hearing it, but I'm sorry, but God has no place in politics. You can cry and scream all you want about it, but it's true. The founders of this country went out of their way to say it. It's even in the Constitution. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Translation means that this prohibits government from encouraging or promoting religion in any way. John Adams in the Treaty of Tripoli said, and I quote, as the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, end quote. James Madison said in 1803, the purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from the shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. James Madison said again in 1822, I have no doubt that every new example will succeed as every past one has done, ensuring that religion and government will both exist in greater purity the less they are mixed together. We are better when God stays out of it, proven by the people that wrote the document that the Republicans claim that they protect. We, the radical left, we aren't ashamed of this country like Trump wants you to believe. We want the country to acknowledge the mistakes it's made. It's not shame, and if it was, shame isn't bad. It helps us from making the same mistakes again and again. The kind of mistakes that lead us to getting racist homophobes having too much power. We want this country to move forward, to stop being broken. We want to be a leader in the world again. And right now, we have an obviously broken system. And the Senate is honestly only part of the problem, but it is a huge problem. And I think the first thing that a Democratic-run Senate needs to do is grant statehood to D.C. and Puerto Rico, because that's going to help balance the scales, make it closer to the will of the people, and it will give millions of people that don't have one a voice in a powerful portion of our government. Think about it. That's it for today. Again, please like, subscribe, follow, or whatever it is on whatever platform you're in, but also please share. The more that we share, and I share a lot, but the more that we share, the more people get to hear what we're talking about. So once again, thanks for listening. This is Rory Wicks. Talk to you next time.